Hezbollah has confirmed two of its senior commanders were among the more than a dozen militants killed in an Israeli airstrike in Beirut on Friday. It was the deadliest Israeli attack on Beirut since the Israel-Hezbollah war in 2006. The strike targeted Hezbollah commanders in a southern suburb in the Lebanese capital during the afternoon rush hour. At least 31 people, including 3 children and 7 women, were killed. Dozens more were injured. Lebanon's health minister says 3 Syrian nationals were among the dead. Rescue workers with heavy equipment resumed searching today for survivors and bodies in the rubble of the apartment building. Waiting to help those pulled alive from the ruins were Red Cross workers. The area has been sealed off by Lebanese troops. Officials say at least 23 people are still missing. Officials say the Hezbollah members were meeting in the basement of the building that was targeted. The commanders killed include senior Hezbollah leader Ibrahim Akil and Ahmed Wabi. Akil has been called the group's second most powerful commander, and the U.S. State Department has described him as a key Hezbollah leader. They say Akil was part of the group responsible for the 1983 bombings of the U.S. Embassy and Marine barracks in Beirut that killed 300 Americans. The U.S. had designated him a global terrorist with a $7 million reward being offered. Now, Israel's Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, posted on social media following Friday's attacks that the country will pursue its enemy in order to protect our citizens, adding that Israel's new phase of its conflict with Hezbollah will continue until its goal of returning residents to the north near the Lebanese border is achieved. Joining me now is Robert Riggs, Middle East geopolitical risk consultant. Robert, thank you as always for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How big a hit is this for Hezbollah?
Well, it's part of a succession of large hits they've been taking over the last several months, starting with Fuad Shukr, who was killed at the end of July, and now 2 months later, another top commander. And Akil was supposedly part of what the Hezbollah calls their Jihadi Council, which is their top decision-making body, of which the Secretary General Nasrallah is the head. But, this means that, Israel has now killed a number of the major military decision makers for Hezbollah, which, along with this pager and walkie-talkie explosion attacks this past week, is certainly going to disrupt their short-term ability to counter Israel as Israel begins to ramp up their military campaign against Hezbollah. So it is a big blow for them.
Could we see possibly Israel going into Lebanon?
I think that it's a high probability. And, this is not something that actually the Israelis would take lightly, because they have gone into South Lebanon back in the 1980s and they ended up being stuck there in Lebanon for 18 years. And then they went in again in 2006 after Hezbollah, kidnapped some of their troops and started that war. And, they lost a lot of soldiers. It's a very difficult mountainous region that Hezbollah has spent decades, actually 40 years, building up tunnels and capabilities to conduct some kind of a guerrilla warfare against Israel. But nevertheless, it's the border between the north of Israel and the south of Lebanon, from which hundreds and hundreds of rockets had been fired into Israel over the last year.
Now, could Israel fight two fronts essentially? Gaza, you'd have Gaza and now Lebanon. Could they do that?
I think they can, because the Gaza war, despite the continuation of casualties and the constant daily reports of attacks by Israeli troops on and fights with Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, that war is winding down. It has now moved from a stronger battle between battalions of Hamas and the Israeli army to more of a type of a war of attrition, guerrilla warfare. And so they have already moved. The Israelis have already moved a number of troops significant number to the northern border over the last 6 months and have been preparing for a very difficult fight against Hezbollah. Now, I think that if Hezbollah and Israel go into a full scale war, there's a significant probability that the United States would join or at least provide a lot of support for Israel on that front.
And what about Iran? What would Iran be doing with this?
Well, this is the really big question: is would Iran more intervene more aggressively on behalf of Hezbollah, which is the crown jewel in their kind of axis of resistance, armed militant non-state actor network? Because Hezbollah is the oldest of those groups. It was formed shortly after the Islamic Republic of Iran came into existence in 1982. And there's a very close connection between the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is the equivalent of Hezbollah in Iran, and Lebanese Hezbollah. So if Hezbollah in Lebanon looks like it's going to be destroyed or significantly debilitated by a war with Israel, Iran would have then expended massive resources and time and effort to build that for nothing. So it does put both, right now, Hezbollah and Iran both are in a difficult lose-lose scenario where if they go to war with Israel, they'll undoubtedly lose. But if they don't, it allows Israel to continue to be more aggressive in attacking them. So, there isn't any good choice for Iran or Hezbollah in this scenario, really.
Okay. Robert, thank you as always for your insight.
Thank you very much. It's always great to speak with you.
Robert Riggs is a Middle East geopolitical risk consultant.